Hello there. Welcome to our podcast, Africa to the World, where we tell African stories to transform people's lives. I am Yvonne.
And I'm Shami.
And we are your hosts. So, following in the same vein where we are talking about establishing healthy eating practices, today we have a special guest in the studio who's going to be helping us decipher the topic on eating healthy and what's the deal with traditional foods. I know most of us are like, oh, traditional foods are icky and all of that. But today we are here to unpack that line of thought and give you some information that will help you to choose good eating habits that will benefit your health journey going forward.
Okay, so in the studio today, our special guest. I'll allow her to introduce herself. When you hear her name, some of you will know why I was laughing. But anyway, so we've invited her here today to just share a little bit about her health journey and how she started to gravitate towards traditional foods, and it's become part of her lifestyle. Actually, it is her lifestyle now. So we can pick her brain a little bit, and hopefully, some of the information will be useful to some of you out there, and you will feel compelled to give it a go with some of our traditional foods. So, welcome, Mai Benjie. I will allow you to give us a brief introduction of who you are.
Thank you, Shami. The name is Plaxidis Madzivire, well known as Mai Benjie, and Shamiso's mother. That's why she was
Hi,
laughing.
Shami. That's it?
Well, that's it. That's me.
Oh my goodness. Okay. That's fine. Okay, so can you just tell us a little bit about your health journey?
Thank you. Let me start, like, say, from about just after about independence. Um, I had a good job, and we all know that during those days, the money had value, and you could almost buy almost anything that you'd want, especially things like clothing and food. And coming from the background of pre-independence, when we came into independence, I thought that having money and being able to buy what you want was a good thing. And I could buy almost anything, the bacon, the egg for breakfast, without even limiting myself, including my family, from such things. Even a bacon and egg every day was still fine for me. Things like the use of cooking oil, salt, and sugar had no limits in my house. But to cut a long story short, out about around 2010, things began to start happen in my life. High blood pressure was uncontrollable. Was diagnosed with diabetes type 2. I was diagnosed with arthritis, and I had terrible backaches. I was overweight. So all that gave me a rude wake up, I would say. Because then when I was diagnosed with high blood pressure, to me it was, okay, I'll take tablets. But when I was diagnosed with diabetes, it was such a rude awakening, because in my history, in my family history, there is that history of diabetes, and I had seen my aunts, my uncles passing on because of that condition, including my mom had the same condition as well. So I just sat down and say, this is it. I'm not going to go down that route. I've seen how this disease can damage one's life, and I'm going to take control of my life. So I started researching on how best to live a life with diabetes and still enjoy my life. I took an online course with Arizona State University on health and wellness. Then I took another course on living with diabetes. So it is during that time that I actually learned that I was like my own poison, because I fed myself and my family with the food that I thought that it was good living, yet it was not so. Most of the food, I would say, like processed food, and all the kind of like Western food, junk food, I would put it, takeaways and things like that. So when I went online and learned a little bit on health and wellness and living with diabetes, I learned that for food to help me, it is got to be good food, not any food. Yes, any food can fill my stomach, but some food is not good for my body. So the first three things that I learned that were not very good for my body, if they are taken in unlimited quantities, was oil, sugar, and salt. I learned that if I am able to manage those three things, I'm like halfway towards achieving what I wanted to achieve. Then I also then learned that things like processed foods were not good for my body. Things like food that is prepared or that is grown using a lot of chemicals and a lot of pesticides was not good for me. This is how I then turned to the traditional foods. For me, when I looked at the traditional food, for example, let's take Rio or Rukweza. In some areas, they call it Rukweza. That is grown without any fertilizer. That's the first thing. The second thing is that it is not sprayed for any pest or anything. It's just natural. To me, I would call that it's kind of organic, not really fully organic, because some people grow it in land where they'd put chemicals before. So I would say it's good enough, not quite organic, but it's very good enough. But for those who grow it on virgin land, then it's 100% organic, you know. Same as mafunde and monga. Those are the things that these days we normally call that this is not good enough food. We want were were, they grow their own maize, they take it to the grinding mill and they want it to kutosurisa, remaining with only the sugars in that milli mill, which is not good for your body as well. So for my food, that's what I take. The rukweza, sadza, munga, sadza, mafunde, sadza, and for rice, there's the traditional brown rice, also grown without chemicals and fertilizers. And then for the other things like pasta, I only take brown pasta, brown bread. It must be whole wheat. Those are the things that I take. The other thing that I learned is that when I'm buying food for my family, I look at labels. I learned that you're supposed to look at the labels. What is it that is in this packet that I'm buying? You're supposed to know everything that is in that packet. If you are reading on the ingredients side and they say a word that you can't even pronounce, I mean, I was taught that then just leave it. If you don't know it, don't eat it. Don't allow that to go into your body if you don't know what it is. So I've learned to do that, and I only buy food that I know what is in it. Trying to avoid the three things that I mentioned at the beginning: sugar, oil, and salt. Because normally, sometimes these things come as hidden sugars, hidden oil, and hidden salt. So I've learned to read labels and eliminate such food from my list and my kitchen. So it has worked well for me, because from the time that I was diagnosed with diabetes and I started taking the kind of natural organic food, I have never taken any medication for diabetes. and my sugar levels are well managed because of the food that I do eat. I also take a lot of vegetables. Any vegetable to me, I don't normally go for the taste or what, because I know that the food value in the vegetable is what I'm going for. And when I'm buying vegetable, let's say I don't have my own garden, if I'm going to buy vegetables from a shop, I look for those vegetables with holes, where grasshoppers had been feeding on as well, because it tells me that the vegetables do not have high levels of insecticide and herbicides. So that's how I choose it. But there was a time when I would say I don't buy muriwo wakaboka nokuti wakadyiwa dyiwa. But to me, that's a sign of telling me that it's a good product. Yakatodyiwa ne-insect, which means the insect was living on it, so I can also live on it. So it has been very, very exciting, because I managed to reverse the conditions that I talked about, like the high blood pressure, which was uncontrollable. It's very stable and back to normal levels now. And my weight, I managed to reverse that, and I can safely say that I am in my safe zone in terms of my BMI. And arthritis also, that has been reduced so much. The episodes now are maybe once in 2 years. It has really helped me. So I can say that the traditional food, or the organic food or natural food, is really like my medicine. But let me just also add that when people hear this, they might think that that will happen in 6 months or 1 year or 2 years. No. As I said, that was from 2010, and we are in 2022. So it takes time, and patience is the game.
Okay, so I've got two questions, and I'll consider them back to back because they're part of the same response. So you mentioned that when you're buying things like vegetables, you don't necessarily consider the taste. Does that then mean that, now I'm going to generalize, healthy food or traditional food doesn't taste good? Secondly, you're a mom. How did you incorporate your decisions around food into your family's diet? Bearing in mind, again, the issue around taste and how the food is prepared and things like that.
First of all, the fact that I said I don't consider the taste, I I am actually saying that there are certain vegetables that are not very tasty, but I still eat them. Not that organic food or natural food is not. Actually, it's the other way around. Organic food, if I give you organically grown, say cabbage or rape, it will taste much better than the rape that is grown using fertilizers. The taste is much better. I was just referring to some of those vegetables that are not, like I said, sweet, but yet the healthy benefits are high. It's actually the same thing as Rio Sada I talked about. And some would say that it's tasteless, but it's healthy. But to some, they will actually tell you that it's very tasty. So it depends with your taste buds actually. Then the second question, as a mother, on how I incorporated this diet into my kitchen or to my family, I would want to say that yes, I tried, but especially the children, it was a bit difficult to get them in. And I know that even some of them still say, I don't like that brown saza, or the chocolate saza, they call it. But I know some have accepted that this is healthy after a few explanations, that this is healthy and it's good to take. Then there's also, like, for example, my husband was not very keen on taking some of the food items I talked about. But I remember explaining to him that this is what is good for our bodies. This will build our bodies. So when I give you something to eat, please eat it because I know it's good for you. From that time, because everybody wants to be healthy, he started enjoying the same meals as I do. So yeah, it's not easy, but I think if one is trying to move to those foods, you need to sit down with your family, sit down with your little ones, if they're little ones, of the grown-ups, and explain the healthy benefits and explain that this is good. For example, in my family, it would be much easier for say my daughter to explain to her children that this is good food. They have seen me suffering from backache, being unable to even come down from my bed. They've seen me suffering from high blood pressure and also the diabetes. So you can actually give it as an example. I'm sure most of us know people who are already suffering from high blood pressure, diabetes, arthritis. So you use this as examples. So do you see Sekuru so and so? Do you know why he's doing this? Do you know why he takes tablets every morning or every evening? It's because of one, two, three, four. And this is what we want to avoid on your life as well. That's why we want you to change your lifestyle and eat healthy. I think that will help. I hope I answered you.
You did. And the some Varutauravanzi, some have accepted her weird sadas. I am one of those some.
I didn't want to mention your name, of course.
So some of the meals that are being spoken about actually have become part of my lifestyle as well. And I always say this when I go to other people's houses, when I visit, even when I'm with my sisters for a while, it's a bit of a struggle because I'm used to being at home where I know kuti no, which got brown rice, we've got brown pasta, we've got sadzareshi and all these things. And so when I'm looking for something starchy, that's my go-to. So now, if you're somewhere else and these things are not really available, it becomes a bit tricky. But I definitely agree with the idea that it would be easier for us to then pass this information down to our kids. And that's one of the things that I think about now as I go along this health journey. Kuti, what type of habits am I picking up? And what type of habits am I going to pass on to my family? Because usually how you start determines how easy it is to bring in certain ideas around food. So, for example, if you are one of those families where generally you don't really add sugar to your food, mwana they grow up akajaira kusava sugar in their food. So it's one of those, you know, I'm not going to abuse it anyway because I'm fine without it. So that's something to consider. Yvonne?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you, Shamiso, and I agree with you, Mai Benji. I think the thing that I think we've got similar stories because I grew up in a household where from day one, my mom being partly Zambian, partly Malawian, I got to experience like traditional, what they call mufarinya, right? And they call it in English cassava. She used to make the cassava, the leaves themselves, as like a relish that we would eat like with in a meal, and we used to have cassava. So I think it's like you rightfully said, Shami. So it's very important for us to start considering how we set the tone for our future families, because honestly, those wild mushrooms that we used to eat, that cassava, mruetsine, I don't know what the English name is, maybe they call it blackjack. All of those things contributed to us having healthy bodies, healthy minds, vitality in general. But honestly, in the process and in the moment, it never made sense. And I just didn't know why I had to eat that. I think I fought it more than I accepted it.
That blackjack. Mm-mm.
Yeah. I'm only accepting it now that I'm older. I see all these health benefits. But my Benji, I just wanted to take you a little bit back that when you spoke about it took you 10 years. How important is it even up to date now for you to plan these healthy meals? Because I know that I like my brown sadza now ever since I've been introduced to it. But I plan it. I don't eat it daily because like I'm like, no, I can't do this every day. How important is it, and how, based on your experience, how important is meal planning, and how did you work it out in your own family unit, and how did you plan meals and made them more exciting for for your children to enjoy, and eventually for like Shamisa's testimony to say, now I'm a fan of that, and wherever I go, I'm like, I need to have my starch in a certain way.
I would say meal planning is one of the major things that you need to do if you want to go the healthy way. You've got also to make sure that you're giving your family a balanced diet. You still need to do that. So when you're planning your meals, like for example, I talked about we've got three small grains, sadas here, munga, mafunde, and rio. Then we also have got the traditional brown rice. Then we also have got brown pasta. So like we've got five starches to play around with. And then sometimes you also take meals without starch. It's also possible. You just put a lot of vegetables. For example, in my plate, I would say 50% is vegetable. Then I've got 25% starch and 25% protein. It's easier to plan, say, for a week, week by week. It's much easier doing it that way and just changing over things. So I really want to stress that yes, meal planning is very important, even your vegetables as well. You also need to do that. For me, I actually started my own small garden of vegetable, but unfortunately, we do have water challenges. So some of them will not survive through, but especially this rain season, I've already established my garden and I'm still advancing with it. I've got so many now. I've already put down vegetables for the family. And I'm also very excited about the blackjack you talked about, mutsine, and also moa. Those two, they grow naturally in my garden, and I'm already enjoying those two. The healthy benefits, you can just look them up of moa. It's so healthy. Also, there is mubora, pumpkin leaves, very healthy. So sometimes also, if I have pumpkin, I can also use that as a starch. Instead of putting the salads and the pastas or the rice, you just have your slice or two slices of pumpkin and then other vegetables and protein. So from breakfast, let me just whilst we're talking about this meal planning, let me just give you an idea of my, say, one day in my life. Breakfast, I can have oats, rolled oats, not the jungle oats. No, in here in Zimbabwe, we normally have the Four Seasons oats. The jungle oats, yes, is an alternative, but the healthy ones are the Four Seasons, the rolled oats, and then, in other words, not the instant ones. Either I have that, or I have bran flakes, or I have mafunde or rio porridge. That's the bit of it. And then I also do my own juices. For example, if right now we are going into the mango season, I'll just get mangoes, wash them, and juice, make my own juice from that. Make guava juice from guavas from my garden. I know there's no preservative in that. There's no additions that I put in there. So it will just come as natural juice for me. And then, so it will be a glass of juice and then my porridge. And then I will also put in one egg or two. The eggs that I normally use or that I use are Roadrunner eggs. I've got just 7 laying hens, and those hens, uh, they lay eggs for our own consumption, and also the extra I do sell. So there is my organic eggs, because I don't feed my chickens with any commercial food, but rather I crush maize, mix it sometimes with sunflower or munga, and give it to my hens. So that's natural already. I've also learned that yes, we've got Tanganda, Stella, everything, but my tea from 2010, I use Makoni tea, very popular in certain areas. But when we grew up, that was called the poor man's tea. It was called the poor man's tea because people would just go in the Zisango and pick it up. And people would say because they do not have money to go and buy Tanganda, they will pick Makoni tea. But actually, it is proved that Makoni tea is actually very healthy, and it's ranked along the groups like rooibos. And to me, that's much, much better than rooibos. Why? Because also by Makoni tea grows in the wilderness, Makomo. There is no fertilizer on it. There is no chemical on it. That one is 100% organic. That's the tea that I take. So from that, that's my lunch. If you eat your breakfast the proper way, with lots of fiber in it and protein, you actually see that it keeps you fuller for longer, and you don't end up picking other things in between. So if I have that breakfast, normally by lunchtime I'll be full. But if say I need something, I can snack on pumpkin seeds and nuts, and maybe a fruit. But most of the times I'll be full by lunchtime. And then for supper, I'll pick from one of the starch I talked about: rio, mafunde, munga, brown pasta, traditional brown rice, or pumpkin, or maybe sometimes just vegetables and meat, depending on the type of vegetables, or maybe just salad and meat. So you see that already I've got a week of my starch and meat. Well, it depends, but always avoid food with too much fat, especially things like pork. It normally comes with a lot of fat. Remove the fat. For chicken, if you can, remove the skin as well, because the fat of the chicken is normally in the skin. So you remove that as well and present a plate that is attractive. And also the other thing is watch your portions. So I would say that meal planning is very important to make it exciting. You don't want to repeat the same thing every day and becomes boring. Then the little ones will resist that shift. But if you make it exciting, or even involve, I would also say even involve them in preparation of the meals, especially on weekends when you are free and they are also not going to school. Involve them so that they get attached to it. And it really helps a lot. That's what I would say on meal planning.
Right. That's amazing, my Benji. I love the fact that you talked about portion control. Like portion control is a big thing when we are, talking about healthy eating habits and making the meal attractive and ensuring you've got the right balance of everything. I think the biggest health benefit that I feel we get from traditional foods is the natural organic fruit ingredients, or should I say nutrients, you get from the food itself. So for someone, maybe my Benji, who's sitting right now and saying, okay, I'm sitting with, maybe I'm asthmatic, or um I'm obese and I need to, lose weight and I need to manage my weight. Tell us about your research process as to why you then decided to stick to certain foods and you incorporated this different blackjacks, muruomoa, and into your diet. What were the health, maybe components you got from those different traditional food that has managed to help you, manage and control your should we say hereditary, maybe diseases that you had that follow the bloodline, that you can give advice to someone who's maybe listening right now and thinking, where do I start, in terms of research, and where do I go?
I would say that especially for us blacks, you know, if we look back at our grandparents or our great grandparents, we would see that they were very healthy. They were taking this food that we're calling the traditional food. That's what they used to live on, without any Western food coming into their lives. And they lived longer. Like one would get to say 80 years, but when you look at them, they looked like 70. And then when you look at our generation, you look at a person who is 50 and they look like they are already 60 or 70, which means they are aging much faster than their actual age. Why? When I look at it, I would say that it's because of the food that we are eating and the food that our great grandparents were eating as well. So when I was doing my research, it made a lot of sense to me that when I looked at the food that I was supposed to be taking as healthy food, which comes naturally, like I said, without any chemicals being used, without any fertilizers being used, but it grows naturally on its own, and maybe not even any manure applied. For example, like the mutsine, whether you put manure or you don't put manure, it will still come out and you still enjoy it. If it's same as more. So when I was doing my research, and I had learned that you read labels, don't take anything that you don't know. That's then when I thought about my great grandparents, how they were living on this food, the traditional food, yet they were so healthy. For example, my dad loved a lot of wild mushrooms, and he was nicknamed Machoa. In Mutare, where I come from, Machoa is mushroom. So my dad was nicknamed Machoa because he so loved that wild mushroom. And he also loved a lot of blackjack. And there's also a greenish naturally growing vegetable also like mutsine, which was called mutsarinzwa. I don't know the English name or the other alternative names in other dialects, but I knew that my dad used to eat that as well. And as far as I remember, my dad had never been to a clinic, never been to a hospital. He had never taken any medication, not even one tablet, until he died. So, when I thought of all that, it made a lot of sense to me that look, these things which we are saying is good living and good food are actually killing us. And also, another thing that actually came in my mind is that the chemicals that are being used to spray all these food that we're eating now, you know, some of them have been banned. But when they came into our lives, they said these are good chemicals. They do this to your crops. They protect your crops. They're good for you. They did not go as far as telling us that they will destroy our lives. And mind you, these people who are manufacturing the herbicides, the pesticides, and all these other chemicals and fertilizers, they are not the same people who are banning these products. But the government, when they look at how the chemicals and pesticides are affecting people's lives, they would then bring in statutory instruments to ban those things. If they came in our lives as good things, how come now they are being banned? I sat down and thought about that, and it made sense to me that these things are not good, but they are destroying our lives. And then when I changed my lifestyle to the traditional ones, without fertilizer, without chemical, or even putting up my own small garden, I actually established my garden right now because of the rains. I've started doing my garden because in our area we've got a challenge of water. So I've already started planting my garden where I use chicken manure as my fertilizer, and I also make my own fertilizers. For example, I've got a small garden of maize that I planted 3 weeks ago, and currently I'm actually preparing my own AN using chicken manure, where I put chicken manure in a bag, and then take a drum of water and sink that bag in the drum of water without touching the bottom of the drum. So I'll be shaking it on a daily basis for 3 weeks. At the end of 3 weeks, I've got my AN. I just dilute it and top my maize. And they taste so sweet without any fertilizer. It's just natural. So I would really encourage someone who is thinking about moving over that look back to your great grandparents and see how healthy they were. Look at your life and see where you are. How many tablets do you take a day? For what different conditions? How healthy are you? Can you walk 5 kilometers a day? Can you? Or can you do simple exercises a day, or you just run out of breath without going anywhere? So you see that this change will actually start to heal your body. But let me warn you that it's not going to take a day or a month or a year, but it will take time. Patience is what is required. As you move from day to day practicing this, like I said, it's been over 10 years for me. And I look much younger now than what I looked in 2010. I am much healthier. I've lost, weight to my healthy levels. And well, I'm really enjoying myself. I can run, I can walk if I want. And just to add on it, I actually eat whatever I want. But knowing the size of my portions and knowing what exactly I am eating, I am happy to say, yes, I can eat what I want because I know it's healthy and it's keeping me healthy as well. That's what I would really want to advise to somebody who is considering moving over. Take a step. Don't procrastinate. Do it. Don't wait until tomorrow. Start now and change your life and take back your health. And by the way, let me also just add that the tablets that you get for high blood pressure and diabetes, they do not treat those conditions. They only control. So instead of you taking tablets to control, why don't you use food to control like I'm doing at the moment? I said from the moment I was diagnosed with diabetes, I've never taken that medication. But I just said to my doctor, give me a chance to use diet. It was after I had researched that actually food can actually correct some of the conditions that we're suffering from today. But be patient, you get there. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Mama Benji. You know what I got from what you were saying just now was that you are what you eat. And the simplicity of traditional foods is that it doesn't cost you much to actually live a better or healthier lifestyle. I love the fact that you have your own backyard garden where you can grow all these different foods, plants, and vegetables that actually help you and your family live better and improve your longevity. That's amazing. So to our listeners, here are some tips. It doesn't cost much. It doesn't cost much to live healthy, but living an unhealthy lifestyle costs you way more than what you can invest in some of these traditional foods to help you live better. Over to you, Shamisa.
So you spoke of how you conducted research to find out all this information around the foods that you've currently based your diet on. And I feel like research is something that can be useful not just to find the types of food that you're supposed to consume and how to incorporate them or when to incorporate them into your diet, but also to find interesting ways of preparing it. Because I think for a lot of people, we have this idea that eating healthy sucks. Like the food just doesn't taste good, it doesn't look as appealing as everything else that we usually eat. But that's not necessarily the case. And this is something that I've learned over the years. I remember the last time that I was living in Grahamstown with a friend of mine, we decided to have meatless Mondays. And initially, when she brought this up, let's try meatless Mondays, I was like, life without meat. But when we actually, or when I actually started doing research, trying to find out what vegetarian meals exist, what can I use to add flavor to my meals, what else are my options besides meat, it opened up this whole new world of possibilities where I actually then realized, oh, okay, just because it's a veggie doesn't mean it has to taste bad. Just because there's no meat, it doesn't mean the meal isn't going to be any good. So that's just encouragement to say if you find yourself hearing all these different names and looking at all these healthy foods and it doesn't seem very appealing to you, there is something out there for everyone as far as your health is concerned. You just need to do a little bit of research, experiment with some things, and find what works for you. Then incorporate that into your diet. And then, just for the record, mother, how old are you? We're gonna put your picture up with the podcast so people can judge for themselves whether you really look younger than you are.
I would say I really look younger than what I looked like in 2010. I'm 58.
That's sneaky. Okay, so I really would like to know, as we approach the last leg of this conversation, what are you doing to share this information that you have as far as healthy eating practices are concerned? Are you doing anything to share this information?
Sure, I am. In fact, I've registered a family trust, which I'm using as a vehicle to share, the healthy lifestyle that I'm enjoying at the moment. And the motto of that business is from our family to your family. So when I say from our family to your family, I mean we are passing the love of healthy food. So I'm into uh, the distribution, preparing and distribution of all the small grains which we prepare nicely. Normally people don't like sazaresio because there is no rumira. It's got some stones in it, but tell you what, we are doing it and we make sure we clean it thoroughly before we take it to the grinding mill so that are rumiri. So we are passing on this to others, and all the other good things like dried vegetables. We try also to dry the naturally grown ones, package them, and sell. Dried mushrooms. Mushrooms are actually very healthy. So for mushrooms, we also sell fresh and dried. So the line of business that we are doing is we are trying to produce uh, the natural food that I'm talking about, the food that I eat. I'm trying to share it with the wider, community. So yes, you can actually find us and enjoy the same food that I'm talking about right now. If you've got difficulties in locating that, just get in touch.
So you heard it, our listeners. So if you are struggling to find ways of, getting all of these traditional foods, Mai Benjie is your go-to person to get all of these traditional foods. And I believe we've got so many tips that we got from her on how to do our research, and also with Shamisa's contributions. Do your research in some of these things. Vegetarian meals are not that boring. Eating healthy is not that boring. So let's just try it out. Try out a meal. Try it out for a week, Have your own testimony of how these foods have transformed your personal life. So for those who would want to get in touch with Mai Benjie for more tips, be it on structuring your healthy meal plans, or if it is on looking for some of these dried mushrooms, I heard are so lovely. I'm a fan of mushrooms. I've never had them dried, so I definitely would want to go to Mai Benjie and try her mushrooms. You can DM us on our Facebook page on Africa to the World, and we'll give you all the details as to where you can find her and how you can then access all of these fun foods. I'm not going to call them boring. I'm going to call them fun foods, because they actually are fun foods. We just need to find creative ways of making it fun for our generation now. So thank you very much for joining us on our journey. This is our last episode for the year. Thank you so much for joining us throughout the year on our journey as we told African stories around Christianity, teenage pregnancy, when we spoke about, black tax, that word we don't want to hear. And now here we are talking about healthy habits, which still form part of our hunu and our culture and how we live as African people. So thank you for joining us throughout the year. It has been such a joy having you listen to us as we rant and go on and tell you about African stories. I am Yvonne.
And I'm Shami.
And we are your hosts, signing off for 2022. And we are so excited to see you in 2023 with Africa to the World version 2.0. So have a great Christmas and a happy new year. And we'll catch you on the next go around.